Okay.
Start over.
Well, you can cut and slice too, can't you?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it.
Good.
Okay, you can start. I'll let you start with. I think didn't you want to talk about the significance of the site first? Or how,
Well, what I was thinking I would talk about in this particular interview is that there are for me four different things that I think are important about the site, or four elements, four aspects to what we are doing here and what we are finding here. The the base for it all is the land, the landscape that we are within, and the landform that the site is located on. And the second aspect is the things that are, the second aspect involves the things that we're finding, the artifacts, and their context, and their distribution, and their variety. And the third aspect, I think, is involves the people who used to live here and their descendants, very much their descendants. And the fourth aspect is what I would call the teaching, what this place can teach us, and how what we learn here goes out to the public. And if you'd like, I can sort of start with each one of those separately and go back to the place. This is a rather extensive site that is located on approximately 10 acres of an old terrace, a Pleistocene post-glacial terrace that was at one time, of course, covered by glaciers, and the activity of soil and rocks washing out of glaciers is part of what formed this terrace. And we definitely, in order to investigate it, need a geoarchaeologist, someone with geologic knowledge of how these kinds of landforms develop, to work with us on the project. And we have as one of our staff members a geoarchaeologist, Maury Morgenstein, who is helping us investigate the very basic part of the archaeological site, the land that it sits on and the soils that are a part of the archaeological or the cultural context. I'm getting a little twisted here. Let me back up a little bit. The landform that we find the artifacts on, the soils that they are a part of, the entire matrix of the site requires investigation that is normally beyond the realm of an archaeologist who mostly deals in cultural levels, cultural layers, and artifacts. We seem to have relatively few very distinct archaeological features. These are changes in the soil, such as post holes, fire hearths, structural elements that we might find in different kinds of sites, but we're not getting here. And probably one of the reasons we're not getting them has to do with the age of the site, the matrix of the site, what's happened on this site. And now we have a doggy interruption.
yeah, look at that. A distraction.
A distraction.
A friend.
That's okay, this part's not going well
Well,
anyway.
you can start over wherever you want to.
Okay, let me see if I can start back to the land. We're on a Pleistocene terrace, the result of glacial outwash deposits as glaciers retreated in the area. Apparently, this was an attractive landform even from the very beginning. However, exactly what this landform looked like is part of what we have to determine in this project, because we need to know why people came to this particular location rather than perhaps some others that are similar. The other thing that we know about this kind of landform is that there are actually more places like this that we as archaeologists haven't really looked at. The only place that we have seen this kind of landform to any extent are along erosional banks, along reservoirs where a dam has been put in. So it's a kind of landform that's not very much investigated in western Washington. These kinds of landforms are known for other locations. It's just our local investigations are somewhat lacking to this point in time. The terrace itself appears to have several channels on it. It looks fairly level at this point in time, but in the past it had somewhat of a different configuration. We have a geoarchaeologist on staff to help us figure out how the land developed, how it took the contours that it has, and how the cultural things that happened here, the cultural events that took place, were related to that landscape. He also is helping us determine exactly what the depositional sequences are, what kind of soil matrix we have, what kind of biological and chemical interaction there is that produces the kinds of soils we have, and the fact that in this site, which is very large, in which we have a significant number of stone tools, we have very little else. Soil chemistry at this location is very important. From the land, we can come to the artifacts. That's what we're finding here.
I'm going to back up a little bit and then you could just change things a little bit.
I'm not looking at the, I keep forgetting to look at the lens. I keep looking at your face.
Okay, this is the third aspect that you...
Second, actually. I'm still working on the first one. I still don't like the first one either.
Okay. What are the artifacts?
Second one, okay. When we first looked at the site and did extensive probing in a 10-meter grid over 10 acres of terrace, what we found were large quantities of chipped stone flakes and some tools spread over that rather large area. We found very little else. We have still found very little else. We have a few bone pieces. They're really fragments. They're badly deteriorated. They're virtually unidentifiable. We may be able to do a little bit with them, but not much. So the soil conditions at this location apparently have something to do with why there is nothing here but stone. We're dealing at this site with stone and with dirt. And for the dirt, we have the geoarchaeologist. He'll help us figure out what the dirt is telling us. And for the stone, we have a couple of lithic specialists who are very much interested in the analysis of the chipped stone materials, what kind of materials they are, how the manufacture took place. We are going to be doing some distributional studies throughout the area. We've done a little bit already and have found that the edge of the terrace, which is actually beyond the construction site, is probably the area where we have the greatest concentration of artifacts. In the interior of the terrace, there are less concentrations, but we do have particular areas where apparently only one type of tool was manufactured or only one type of material was used. No, Delphi. Delphi! Come here. Enough. It's not going smoothly.
That's okay. We'll, she's contributing. All right.
Third thing is the people. Third aspect of the site involves the people who lived here. This, in modern day times was the land of the Snoqualmie people. In the past, it was the land, well, let me stop on that.
Over on that one.
Start over.
You had your eyes shut at the very beginning.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I think with my eyes closed. The third aspect of the site, of this location, involves the people who lived here. In immediately post-glacial times, more than 8,000 years ago, people did come to this location. They made tools here. They gathered materials here. We don't really know all of their activities at this point in time. Some of our studies involving the soils, involving a variety of
evening meeting to be able to affect passage of the ordinance. Things happen quickly, reactions happen quickly. Essentially, the union felt betrayed, and predictably, when you feel betrayed, you act, and you act quickly, and the actions were planned at strategic meetings to get city government's attention. It's like any relationship where the partners are talking about something they're thinking of doing, for instance, adding a family room, and one person says we can't afford it, and the other one goes out and buys a sailboat. So you have problems, with that kind of a situation.
Which did you do?
I have a jib in my closet right now. One of the things that we were considering was informational ticket, and just looking at how far things were going. We had 1,500 of these made up, and we had one that said partnership, not patronage, and we had one that talked about Seattle not for sale, and we had one that said city workers do its best, because when you start having these discussions, you invariably call the question of self-esteem in terms of work as somebody that work it. So things are pretty hot, and if you need an indicator, baseline indicator of how bad a relationship is, that would be it. So that's the low point of where things were at that point. Cooler heads prevailed. There were 11th-hour meetings among people a couple of days before the proposed ordinance was to come into consideration. And as a result of those meetings, rather than do this dramatic and confrontational action on both sides, as the Godfather says, blood is a big expense, a series of meetings were scheduled whereby we would actually, on both sides, make a joint effort to address the relationship. That really isn't a movie, isn't it? As a result of that, Rondre Hillier met with us in a number of facilitated meetings, and we came out with a statement of joint commitment, which was a joint document. And essentially was the child of labor and management and created by both and acceptable to both, which is the important part for buy-in. Among the dozen or so areas to be examined by the joint labor management effort was the concept of employee involvement. I want to talk about that just a little bit. I started out in business school myself. Boston University School of Business was big on the Hawthorne study, which is if you change the lighting in a room, you get to make more widgets, and if you're the vice assistant to the assistant to vice president, you get to go up the ladder a little bit. And we talked about the National Training Laboratory work, and that we had things called task groups or T groups, which are the forerunner of TQM. This is 20-something years ago, if I don't mind showing my age. So there's really not a lot that's really new under the sun for the most part. But in this otherwise fairly good business school, they forgot the other half of the equation, and I personally didn't learn about labor at all from that otherwise good business school, and it took a while to learn that other part. But labor's been around since the time of the pyramids, and among the first things that were translated from the pyramids was wages and time and hours, and a brief rendition of a organized labor movement that was happening at that time. So they left out that half. And now you have a number of otherwise well-educated managers like myself who are basically running around wanting to get good quality results, yet forgetting the other part of the equation. So we all met to see how labor management can relate and how they can configure to be able to optimize service. We were looking at what is a possible structure that both could agree on and both could buy into to examine the provision of service to citizens here in Seattle. We have a little bit of guidance in the form of what's called the Electramation case, and that's a Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals federal case that gave some principles and talked about what happens when you have an employer, like in that case, Electramation, that was doing the old form of top-down organization of ideas and structured communication. And Electramation wanted to learn how to do work better, but they went ahead and then picked the committee members and identified the goals unilaterally. They drafted agendas. They set the roles for the committee and for the members, and just did a number of things which were essentially unilateral movements and initiatives. And in essence, they dominated, rather than collaborated on the issue of employee involvement. And then they were surprised to find themselves in federal court. But labor is interested and is required by law to maintain the integrity of the collective bargaining relationship. And labor alone has a duty under statute to have its eye on fair representation, and that also includes being aware of all of the dynamics and all of the interests of the bargaining unit in question as a whole. So they have to have impact into the process. So I guess to summarize what I would then say is that a system of employee involvement committees, which are emerging, functioning under labor management committees, which are on the increase as well, is a labor management relationship for the exchange of productivity discussions that labor supports.
Patch it through, but I have to one fell run.
Yeah, absolutely. You can stop when you need to. Don't worry about that.
Just remember where what word I stop
where
on.
you sto-
And then this thing.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
But, starting with it.
Darn, sorry about that. Okay, after several months of excavating, it's been we've been able to find out that we do have a distinct, maybe two distinct strata, just two distinct areas within the strata that may produce most of the tools. Unfortunately, the the neat, clean location of these tools and flakes, because of the intense disturbance by the roots and various other animals, burrowing mammals, and the whole bit, tree throws, the distinct strata may be in upwards of 20-30 centimeters thick, not nearly as clearly definable. However, because the archaeologists are working so methodically and so thoroughly in taking the notes and recovering the necessary data from the soil where we're finding the artifacts, we can pretty much determine that there is a distinct area within the within the strata that is producing most of the artifacts. It's okay that sometimes you find the flakes up high as well as down fairly low, but there is a pretty well definable area where you do get the bulk of your artifacts. Not nearly as tight as we would have wanted it, but still fairly distinctive. And
what is that? And what age? We'll give you a break.
that's okay. The age is very interesting. Thank you. I've already got one.
Got some?
Yeah, but I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe he's got something special. Yeah. Shot of brandy or something.
Oh boy.
You're doing great though. You're
I used to have this when I was a kid too. I had allergies and the whole bit, and I remember.
We are in the forest.
Oh, jeez. It's terrible. I'm mowing the lawn. I'm dying on the machine here.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, it was bad. I remember my dad, he had his great aunt, and he wanted to get a recording of me, and send it to his great aunt in Montana or wherever the heck she was. I was 7 years old. Here I am coughing, and well,
Can you bring that down a tiny bit? Okay, there we go.
Well, this is the boy, Green Aunt Mildred.
this is the boy. Oh my gosh, you should cut him down to 3 packs a day at least. Anyway,
The age of the artifact.
okay. That's a good question. The relative age of the artifacts, although yet to be really determined, they all appear to be roughly perhaps older than at least perhaps 1,000 years to possibly as old as 8,000-9,000 years. We're finding them above the glacial outwash material, which has been tentatively dated roughly about 9,000 to 10,000 years. We do occasionally find some artifacts within the glacial outwash material, but it's pretty well determined that this material has probably been filtered through the soil and is coming to rest within the glacial material. So the material generally, the cultural material is generally younger than about 9,000 to 10,000 years. It would be much easier to determine the age of these artifacts and flakes with the presence of carbon or bone, something that could be easily dated with radiocarbon. But there's a difficulty with regard to the amount of forest fire activity that's been occurring here. Sometimes it's difficult to determine between an actual human feature of human origin with fire and carbon, while there's a huge, large strata of burned wood from a recent forest fire. So there's the interesting thing that our archaeologists have to try to differentiate, because the forest fires also create fire-cracked rock, much that you would find in a prehistoric hearth or fire feature.
So,
where am I going to go with that?
Actually, if you could go back to forest fires and the animals and talk about how that affected because I have a lot of shots of people working at different layers.
Different layers, okay. As you will have seen throughout most parts of the site, the surface topography is quite varied and, and looks kind of jumbled. That's just a natural process of the roots and the various forest animals digging and churning up the soil. Over time, trees grow, expand, die off and fall over, and that has quite a traumatic effect on this soil stratigraphy. While you have a lot of the artifacts during a particular period of occupation will have been laid down in a very tight soil strata within a very well-defined area. Over time, the artifacts get scattered, trees grow up through areas, roots tend to disturb them. So that basically pushes the artifacts up and it pushes them down within the soil strata. Recently we had a mountain beaver in one of our units and a rabbit. So there are a lot of mammals out here that burrow, natural natural occurrence of their living in this forested environment is digging and burrowing, and that has a big impact on where we find the artifacts. But generally we are doing a very good job in maintaining discrete orientations on the flakes, where they're being found, and at what levels, and we can really define actually where the bulk of the artifacts are being being found, and how that relates to which particular areas were occupied at what different times at different times. Since the site area is so large, it's very probable that the prehistoric inhabitants came back to the area, but didn't always camp in the same locale at different times. Perhaps they came up at one time, camped up very close to the edge of the terrace. Then another time later, as they came back through the area, they camped further back away from the area. So we've got discrete locales, discrete areas within this large area that are basically called activity zones, activity areas where they camp for a week or two, do their reduction of stone tools, do their camping, do their cooking, and you'll have what we call basically activity or living areas. It's very probable that that most of these places are it's easy to find because of the density of artifacts and tools relative to areas that just have miscellaneous flakes in and out of them. Still, what we'd like to have is the feature, the fire pit, and we'd love to have a pit house, some kind of dwelling that they may have stayed in. These type of items, these type of features are very ephemeral, and in consideration of the amount of disturbance through historic logging and recent forest fires, we think we're doing pretty good in just being able to determine the areas of higher activity that probably identify an activity zone versus just natural movement of flakes in and around the land surface. It's not necessarily that easy to actually put a specific date on artifacts that occur nearer the surface versus those that occur much lower down in the archaeological or in the stratigraphic profile. These could occur. There are various places throughout the area that soil deposition is less than in another area. So we basically have to try to find that carbon or that bone that's in association with these artifacts that we would find in features, get a date on that, and have a much better idea on actually determining how old these particular artifacts are at various places across the site area. Cool.
Perfect.
I hope that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Try to listen to myself, is this making sense?